Hello, and welcome back to another creepy and true Louisiana tale. This one, a cautionary story. Now, ask yourself this: is it money that is the root of all evil, or is it the love of money that's the root of all evil? After you hear this tale, you decide for yourself. This story takes us to the capital of Louisiana, Baton Rouge, to a gas station convenience store where a gentleman named Daniel often hangs out. He even helps out around the property by keeping it clean and taking out the trash. Now, Daniel is homeless, and he does certain tasks around the property in exchange for food and sometimes shelter in the storage room behind the store. There's a gentleman who we'll call James that frequents this particular store just about every other day on his way to work. Now, James and Daniel become acquainted, friendly even, often exchanging conversation about sports, politics, different things that happen in the world. They've gotten accustomed to a routine when they see each other. One day, James slips Daniel a $10 bill and tells him, "Do something nice for yourself." Daniel obliges and takes five of those $10 and buys himself a lottery scratch off ticket. And lo and behold, Daniel gets a big surprise. One of his tickets wins $150,000. Daniel is excited, so excited he can't wait until he sees James the next day to let him know. You see, Daniel, while he could read and understand some things, needed quite a bit of help. So while he knew he had won this large amount of money, he wasn't exactly sure what the process was to claim it. So, of course, the man he considered a friend would help him. So the next day, he's waiting for James to come in, and he waves him down before he can walk into the store. And he pulls out the ticket and he shows James and he tells him, "This money is going to change my life." He said, "That $10 you gave me was really lucky. Thanks." But James wasn't happy for Daniel. You see, that was his last $10, and he gave that to Daniel being nice because he was a nice guy. In actuality, that $150,000 was his because it was his money that purchased it. The more he listened to Daniel talk about what he was going to do with his windfall, the angrier he got. So he decided to brew up a plan to make sure that money was his and his alone. So he instructed Daniel to keep quiet. Don't tell anybody else about the money because people can't be trusted. When I get off of work, I'm going to come and pick you up and take you home with me. And I'll make sure you get to the lottery office so you can claim your money. Now, Daniel happily accepted the offer, thinking that James had the best of intentions in mind. But he didn't. You see, James was facing his own financial problems, and 150,000 would certainly make a huge difference for him. Besides, Daniel was homeless. He had no family, no friends. If something happened to him, nobody would care. So while he's at work, James is hatching his plan to get his hands on Daniel's money. And just as promised, when he got off of work, he went and picked Daniel up, brought him home, let him get cleaned up, gave him a good meal. And at the end of it, he shared a cocktail and toasted Daniel's luck. But unfortunately for Daniel, that cocktail would be his last. James had laced it with a concoction that would put Daniel out so that he could finish him off without any problems. He had already prepared a space to put Daniel's remains somewhere where nobody would think to look. They finished their drinks and said their goodnights, and each went to bed for the night. James sat up listening until he heard Daniel's breathing get shallow. And then he knew it was time. He went into the room Daniel was sleeping in, grabbed a pillow, and put it over Daniel's face. And he pressed down with all of his strength until he was certain Daniel had taken his last breath. The first thing James did was take that ticket and put it in a secure spot. And then he went and moved Daniel's body. Now, Daniel's remains have never been recovered. But just because Daniel wasn't in his physical body doesn't mean he didn't stick around. James went to bed thinking he had gotten away scot-free and that he was going to glide into that lottery office in the morning, claim that 150 as his, and he would be on Easy Street. But little did he know, Daniel was a man that didn't go away very easily. The next day, James went into the lottery office, cashed in that ticket, and had a check issued, and made his way to the bank with a big smile on his face. He had quit his job, so he was going home for the rest of the day for a much needed rest and to think about all that money. When he opened the door and walked into his living room, he saw muddy footprints scattered. And he thought to himself, someone's broken into my home. So he's looking all around. There's no sign of anyone, no sign of anything opened or unlocked. Maybe it was from my shoes last night, he thought. So he went ahead and cleaned up and went about his day, thinking about all the things he was going to buy with his money. He would finally pay off some bills, and he was going to take himself on a vacation. And then, while he's sitting in his living room contemplating how to spend that money, he hears a tapping on the door that leads out into the yard. Broad daylight. Who could be in my yard, he thinks. So he gets up off the sofa, and when he turns and looks at the door, he sees a silhouette, a familiar silhouette, but how is that possible? It looked like Daniel. So he rushes to the door and pulls it open, and no one is there. But there's a set of muddy footprints leading to the door and then back out into the yard. It's not possible. I finished Daniel off. So James gets on his clothes, gets on his shoes, goes out into his yard, and makes his way deep into the woods behind his house, where he had disposed of Daniel's body. And he makes his way to the space where he buried Daniel. And he gets down on his hands and knees and he is clawing through the mud until he gets to Daniel's body. He's definitely dead. And then behind him, he hears, James. And he turns and he looks over his shoulder and no one is there. But he feels a presence. He covers Daniel's body back up and he quickly stands up and makes his way back to his home. And the whole way back, he feels like something or someone is following him. And he quickly slams his back door. When he turns around, he sees that silhouette and a hand up on the door. I'm seeing things. I've been working too hard. I need some rest, is what he tells himself. And he goes and he lays down to take a nap. Well deserved. Takes a lot out of you to murder and bury a body. But his sleep was not pleasant because he continued to hear Daniel's voice calling his name. James. James. And he tossed and turned, reminding himself that he saw Daniel's body in that hole in the woods and there was no way he was still alive. Now, James wasn't a man that believed in the spiritual. But what many people don't understand is that evil actions often have immediate consequences. And James was about to realize as the day crept on. James took to drinking. I just need a couple of days for this check to clear, and then I'm out of here, is what he told himself. Just a couple of days. And then he heard Daniel's voice. James. And then he saw a shadow pass in his living room. Someone is toying with me, he thought. So he went and he grabbed his gun And he searched, but found no one. He goes into the kitchen, puts his gun on the counter, and decides he's going to make himself another drink. And then at the back door, he hears tapping. And he sees that same silhouette. Enough is enough. And he grabs his gun, rips the door open, walks outside, and stumbles, falls right on his gun, pulling the trigger by accident, shooting himself right in the chest. As he lay on his back patio, bleeding, unable to scream for help, unable to move, he sees someone come and stand over him. It's Daniel, smiling. And as James fades away, so does Daniel. When the police come 3 days later to do a welfare check on James, they find him deceased. And they look around and see a bunch of muddy footprints that they figure are his. And they make their report that James, after having a little too much to drink, for whatever reason, stumbled out of his back door, gun in hand, trips and gets tangled in his hose, falls on his weapon, and accidentally pulls the trigger, killing himself in an accidental shooting. Case closed. Now, you tell me, is it the love of money that's the root of all evil, or is the money itself the place where the evil lies? Let me tell you something. Sometimes a financial windfall can end up costing you more than you bargained for. So the next time you find yourself wanting to purchase a lottery ticket, ask Daniel for a little bit of luck and see if he sends a financial windfall your way. This story was by special request, Uncle Dwayne. I hope you enjoyed tonight's tale. A cautionary one about making sure you know what you're wishing for when it comes to money and the love of it.